More than just a name, cut to fit. What makes a father? Is it the shared strands of DNA or the sleepless nights spent working double shift to send money home? For one man who gave everything to keep his daughter's dreams alive, the answer was clear until a DNA test shattered all he believed about love, sacrifice, and identity. Leonard lived with Marsha and their 3 daughters in a small house with a zinc roof on the outskirts of Port Antonio, Portland. When it rained, parts of the roof leaked and the wind slipped through cracked windows like a whisper. The house was no palace, far from it, but within its old frame resided something stronger than comfort, a gritty kind of love that transcended hardship, and a bond of family that endured long after the day's exhaustion had settled in. Leonard had spent years working as a security guard at the Jamaica National Bank, clocking in faithfully from 9 to 5. However, his day did not end there. By 6, he was stationed once again, this time at the gate of the College of Agriculture, Science and Education, standing guard until 10 each night. Day after day, he endured long hours on his feet, the soles of his scuffed boots wearing thin and threatening to give out with every shift. His only reprieve came in the form of the bank's air-conditioned lobby during the day and the cramped but sheltered guardhouse at night. Small mercies against the blazing sun by day and the cool evening breeze that crept in after dark. Although his paycheck was steady, it was barely enough to cover groceries, school expenses, and other essential household needs. Meanwhile, Marsha could never seem to keep a job. She tried her hand as a cashier at the supermarket, as a cleaner at a guest house, and by selling juice and snacks outside Port Antonio High School. However, illness, stress, or sudden layoffs always sent her back home defeated. Leonard became the sole breadwinner. Life was a constant battle to stretch every penny, to keep food on the table, and to ensure the girls remained in school. As a father, he bore the weight in silence. He went without so his daughters, his princesses, could have what they needed to survive. Every day, he rose with weary limbs and quiet determination, mustering just enough strength to persevere. But strength has its limits. He hit his breaking point when the Minister of Finance announced rising inflation in the national budget, and Marsha told him she was pregnant again, this time with Kimora. That night, Leonard collapsed in the yard, head in his hands, knees pressed into the dirt. Something inside him snapped, not in rage, but in resolve. For years, friends had urged him to try his luck in America. He'd always said no. He couldn't imagine leaving his family. But that night changed everything. Later in bed, beside Marsha, he whispered, "I can't do this here anymore. I have to go." "To where?" she asked, sitting up slowly, half skeptical, half afraid. "To America." "Leonard, you don't even have papers." "I'll find a way." And he did. With the help of an old friend, Leonard managed to secure a tourist visa. He left Jamaica with a single suitcase, $200 Jamaican in his pocket, and a promise carved into his heart. "I'm doing this for us. When I make it, I'll come back to you all with everything I've earned, or when I return, it'll be to bring you all with me." Leonard Barrett boarded that plane with a heavy heart and a determined mind. He was leaving behind the 3 lights of his life, his daughters, Kerry, Kesha, and little Kimora, to build a better future. He spent his first 2 months in New York sleeping on a friend's couch before finding a small basement room to rent. He worked off the books, construction by day, dishwashing by night, anything that paid. Every dollar he could spare, he sent home. Birthday cards, Christmas barrels, school supplies stuffed into boxes wrapped with love. When Kesha passed her exams for Titchfield High, the best school in the parish, Leonard cried quietly on the phone. He masked it with a proud smile in his voice. "I'm proud of you, baby. Keep going. I'm watching from here." But Leonard had overstayed his visa, and things began to tighten. He lived in constant fear of being caught, deported, or undone. The only real path to legal status was marriage, but the cost of a business arrangement, thousands of dollars, was far beyond what his modest earnings could afford. So he took a different route. He began dating an American woman named Sandra. After months of careful courtship, they got married. It wasn't a grand love story, but it was real enough, grounded in mutual respect and shared goals. 5 years of living in the shadows came to an end when Leonard finally received his green card, and with it, a work permit. He secured steady employment cleaning at a hospital in the Bronx. The job was punishing, long hours on his feet, aching joints, silent subway rides, but it paid. And more importantly, it gave him the chance to save. For the first time in years, the dream of reuniting his family felt within reach. Back in Jamaica, things had changed. Marsha had given birth to 2 more children, each by a different man. The little money Leonard sent home was being stretched thin, used not just for his daughters, but for children who weren't his. Still, Leonard never missed a remittance. He worked grueling night shifts and double weekends, counted every dollar, lived frugally, and sent home whatever he could, because his daughters mattered more than pride or resentment. At his request, Marsha rented a spacious, comfortable house to ensure a good home for herself and the children. And finally, after years of sacrifice, he filed the paperwork to bring them to America. The paperwork moved slowly, dragging on with the weight of bureaucracy. But when the day came for the mandatory DNA tests, a standard step in immigration cases, Leonard didn't hesitate. He had raised those girls in spirit, if not in daily presence. His love for them was unquestioned. This was supposed to be the start of a new chapter, the hard-earned reward for years spent bleeding dignity into duty. But when the results came back, something was wrong. Carrie and Kimora were confirmed as his biological daughters, but Kesha, his 19-year-old middle child, the one who always called him first on Father's Day, the one with his deep-set eyes and quiet smile, was not. The test was clear, conclusive. Marsha dismissed it immediately, demanding a retest. When the second test came back, this time involving both parents, the results were the same. The mother's DNA was a perfect match, but Leonard's was not. The truth hit like a stone. Leonard sat in stunned silence in the modest living room, the letter trembling in his hand. "This can't be," he whispered to himself, voice barely audible. His mind raced back to the small, everyday moments. The way Kesha held her fork just like him. How she'd say, "Watch and see," with that same stubborn warning when scolding her sisters. Even her walk, there was no mistaking it. With a shaking hand, he reached for the phone and called Marsha, his ex-partner and mother of his girls. "Leonard," she answered softly, as if she'd been waiting for the call. "You can't tell me the test is wrong again," he said, voice low, barely holding back the pain. Marsha sighed deeply. "It was just that one time, Leonard. Remember that week? We weren't together. You'd gone to your mother's in Mandeville." Leonard's thoughts spun back to that argument, the space he'd needed, and the distance that had grown between them. When he returned, Marsha had seemed different. He thought it was regret. Now he understood. "But you let me raise her. Let me believe she was mine," he said, voice breaking. "She is yours, Leonard." Marsha's voice cracked with emotion. "You're the only father she's ever known. She looks up to you. She loves you." He hung up the phone, the weight of her words sinking deep. That night, Leonard stared long at the photo on the wall. 3 girls in their school uniforms stood side by side, Kesha in the middle, tall and proud. She looked so much like him, but blood didn't lie. In the days that followed, Marsha kept the secret buried, just as she had done with the identity of Kesha's biological father. She couldn't meet Kesha's gaze without feeling the sharp sting of betrayal. Yet she masked the growing fracture with practiced warmth, unwilling to let Kesha see the cracks forming beneath the surface. In every way that truly mattered, Kesha was Leonard's daughter, except for one truth. a truth that only time would fully reveal. For Leonard, the days that followed were heavily laden with anger, regret, and grief. One quiet morning, Leonard sat on the sofa in the living room, staring blankly ahead. Sandra sat beside him, gently wrapping a comforting arm around his shoulders. "How are you feeling this morning?" she asked softly, her voice laced with concern. Leonard let out a long, weary sigh, shaking his head in disbelief. "I always knew paternity fraud was a thing back home, but I never thought it would reach me. Never thought I'd get a jacket, cut to fit, to blow wow," he muttered bitterly under his breath, the weight of betrayal pressing heavily on his chest. Sandra squeezed his shoulder gently. "We'll get through this, Leonard," she said firmly. "We'll navigate these rough waters together, one step at a time." For a moment, silence settled between them, filled only by the soft hum of the city beyond the window, a fragile quiet, holding the uncertain weight of what came next. Sandra, a devoted wife, did her best to support Leonard, but behind his quiet "I'm okay" lay a silence that grew heavier and louder with each passing day. He found himself reflecting on Kesha more than he dared to admit, analyzing her laugh, the way she wrinkled her nose when puzzled, her quiet smirk when she got something right. Everything reminded him of himself, and yet the truth gnawed at him like rot beneath a polished floor. One night, unable to sleep, Leonard sat in the kitchen with a cold cup of tea cradled in his hands. The apartment was still save for the low hum of the refrigerator. He opened WhatsApp and stared at Kesha's contact. He hadn't reached out since the second test confirmed what the first had said, but the ache in his chest told him he couldn't stay silent any longer. He hit the call button. After a brief ring, her face appeared. "Hello, Daddy." Those two words hit him like a hammer. He paused, swallowing hard. Again, she said, "Hello, Daddy." He finally looked up. Her eyes narrowed with concern. "You don't look like you've slept." He nodded, avoiding the screen. "I haven't." A pause. "Did I do something wrong?" she asked, her voice soft, almost afraid. "You've been different." That broke something in him. Her innocence, her confusion. The sound of her voice felt like a splinter pressing deeper. He took a shaky breath. "Kesha." She tilted her head. "What is it? Did your mother talk to you?" "Talk to me about what?" Leonard gripped the cup tightly, knuckles clenched. "Your mother and we've been through a lot. And sometimes the past catches up with you in ways you never expect." She looked puzzled now, eyes scanning his face on the screen. "You remember the DNA test we had to take for the immigration paperwork?" She nodded slowly. "Yeah, routine stuff, right?" He nodded barely. "They came back. We did them twice." And his throat tightened. "Kesha, the results said I'm not your biological father." Silence. A still, breathless kind of silence. She stared at him, as if trying to hear him again, without him repeating it. "What?" she whispered. I thought it was a mistake," he rushed. "Your mom did too, but we did another one. Same result." Kesha blinked rapidly. "But everyone always said I look like you. My walk, my smile. People joke that I'm your twin." "I know," he said softly. "And I see it too. I still do." Her voice cracked. "So you're saying you're not my dad?" He looked straight at her now. "I'm saying that the test says I'm not, but my heart, my soul, has only ever known you as mine since the day you were born." Her face twisted. She stood up abruptly, and the sound of the chair scraping across the tile cut through the call. "Why are you telling me this?" she snapped. "Why now?" He held the phone closer, eyes pleading. "Because I couldn't lie to you. I was lied to, and I didn't want to do that to you. You deserve the truth." She shook her head, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. "So what am I then? Some mistake? Someone's secret?" "No," Leonard said firmly, his voice shaking. "You are my greatest joy. Nothing changes that. but the hurt was too deep, the wound too fresh. "You should have kept this to yourself," she whispered. And then the screen went black. She hung up. Leonard stood still, tears sliding down his cheeks, his hands clenched at his sides. He had chosen the truth, but it had come at a cost. He shut his eyes tightly, forcing back the sobs. Days passed. Kesha barely spoke. She picked at her food, rarely finishing a meal. Kerry and Kimora sensed something was wrong, but no one said anything aloud. The silence grew heavier with each passing day. Frustrated by their mother's refusal to talk, the sisters finally video called Leonard. Reluctantly, he told them the truth. They were shattered. Anger and disappointment surged, directed at the mother who had kept them in the dark. The house grew quiet, but not peacefully so. Tension simmered between Marcia and her daughters, unspoken but ever present. With phone in hand one evening, Leonard stared at the screen, the glow of the message light in his tear-streaked face. His thumb hovered over the keyboard, but he couldn't type. Not yet. He read it again. "Daddy, I don't know who I am right now. My whole world just changed. But I want you to know something. When I called you Daddy all my life, I meant it. Not because of a test, not because of DNA, because of who you were to me every single day. I'm angry, I'm confused, but I'm not gone. I just need time. Love always, Kesha." His breath caught in his throat. The ache in his chest didn't lessen, but it shifted. No longer hollow, just heavy with love and sorrow. He placed the phone on the table and sat quietly in the dark, hands trembling. The silence around him filled only by the weight of her words. Outside, the world carried on. Inside, something had changed. She wasn't gone. She just needed time, and he would wait. Leonard wept for a long while. He stared out the window, frost gathering on the edges like creeping doubt. The world outside was still, indifferent. Street lights flickered in the distance, casting pale halos on the snow-covered street. But none of it reached the emptiness inside him. His breath fogged the glass. He pressed his forehead against it, the cold biting his skin, a welcome distraction from the ache in his chest. He thought of Kesha's tiny fingers wrapped around his thumb the day she was born, and how he had run up the hill to Port Antonio Hospital, lungs burning, heart full. The nurses had laughed at him, sweaty, out of breath, grinning like a fool. But he didn't care. That was the day his life had changed. He remembered the first time she called him Daddy, her voice high and sweet, arms lifted toward him like he was the only safe place in the world. And he had been. He had made sure of it. Every scraped knee, every mosquito bite he soothed with a dab of alcohol and a kiss. Every homework assignment they puzzled through together at the kitchen table. He had been her anchor. He remembered Kesha's measles at age 3, how he had held her for hours, whispering lullabies and prayers. He remembered her running barefoot in the yard, falling and splitting her knee open. He had carried her to the hospital on his back because they couldn't afford a taxi. He remembered the double shifts he worked just to buy her a bicycle, the way her eyes lit up as if he had handed her the world. Now, those memories hung in his mind like faded photographs, still precious, still his, but touched by the ache of doubt, not from her, from the world, from a piece of paper, from a truth that didn't care about love. He closed his eyes and leaned his head back against the window, letting the cold hold him for a while, the kind of cold that gets into your bones. Whatever happened next, he knew one thing with certainty. No document, no DNA could rewrite the way he had loved her, or the way he always would. Those moments weren't illusions. They were real. They had happened. And yet, the frost thickened. The truth sat in his gut like a stone. Who was he now? Not just to Kesha, but to himself. How could a piece of paper tell him she wasn't his child? And yet, it had. Twice, he stopped sleeping. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw it. The moment Kesha found out, the way her face crumpled, the way she might never call him daddy with the same affection again. The weight of betrayal wasn't just Marsha's, it was the world's. Leonard had sacrificed everything, his time, his strength, his dreams. And now, the one thing he had left, fatherhood, was being erased by ink on a page. And Kesha, she was the one who looked most like him. It felt like a cosmic joke. Weeks after the confrontation, after Kesha's quiet retreat and her heartbroken message, Leonard sat alone on the edge of the couch, staring at an old envelope he had carried from Jamaica. Inside were 3 crayon drawings, one from each daughter. Kesha's was a simple picture of a stick man with a big smile, standing next to a house and a heart. At the top, in uneven letters, she had written, "Me and my daddy, and I love you." He closed his eyes. Maybe blood mattered to some. Maybe it mattered in courtrooms, in hospitals, in tests. But it hadn't mattered when she cried in his arms at the airport. It hadn't mattered when he worked through Christmases to buy her first car. It hadn't mattered when she kissed his forehead after dinner and said, "Thanks, Dad." Leonard and Sandra had welcomed her, just as they had the other girls, in their modest home, with open arms, with unwavering love, and with a place to truly belong. He never stopped pushing for her visa. With his wife's help, and after countless legal hurdles, all 3 girls were granted a visa. The day they arrived at JFK Airport, Leonard stood at the gate, his eyes searching. His hands were buried deep in his coat pockets, not due to the cold. He was accustomed to that by now, but to steady the nerves, dancing in his fingers. Travelers streamed past in hurried clusters, dragging wheeled suitcases and cradling takeout coffee. Yet Leonard's gaze moved past them all, focused on just one thing. Then through the sliding glass doors, he saw them, taller than he remembered, carrying more than just luggage. They were carrying years, the kind of years that settle into your shoulders, into your eyes. They spotted him, paused, and for a moment, the airport faded. It was Kesha who ran to him first. Daddy. That one word carried every meaning of fatherhood, every sacrifice, every tear he'd wept, every silent prayer he'd whispered. It wasn't biology that defined it. It was this moment, this bond, this quiet recognition of love that had never needed proof. Leonard stepped forward, arms open, not wide, but steady. She dropped her bags and ran into them. "Daddy," she cried, arms wrapped tight around him, face buried in his chest. He held her, trembling. In that moment, he didn't care whose blood ran in her veins. She was his. Always had been, always would be. Moral of the story: fatherhood is defined not by blood, but by love, sacrifice, and presence. The deepest bonds are built through unwavering commitment, not biology. In the end, truth can wound, but love, when patient and enduring, can heal even the deepest fractures. If you enjoy the story, show some love, like, comment, and subscribe to Word, Sound, and Story, where Troy McKenzie transforms real-life experiences into meaningful, dramatic, and entertaining tales.